Yeah, welcome to the Facilities and Finance Committee meeting of the School District of Waukesha on Monday, July 10th. Is the meeting properly posted?
Yes, it is.
Okay. Opportunities for citizens to speak. I see we do have a correspondence from a citizen today.
They were here in the crowd, and then I told them I would look into this for them, so they wouldn't have to bother sitting for the
Well,
meeting.
just so we have it for reference, well, this one's addressed to Amanda, but anyway. Yeah.
Mine is
Yeah.
addressed to Amanda.
Yeah, for reference, their concern is about hello, Mr. McCaffrey, we just started, their concern is about the fence, I assume that's close to their property. I know these people live across the street.
Across the street, sound
From
like.
Waukesha South High School. They think it's unseemly and a safety hazard, and my guess is it probably is both, so something we'll have to take a look at. Now we're on to the committee issues, actions items, approval of monthly vouchers.
Okay, we did have two questions, and one had to do with, excuse me, Project Lead the Way, and wondering what some of what the purpose was. Now, from what I understand, and I do have questions into others that were gone for the day already, Project Lead the Way is a company that does help with curriculum development. It helps with bringing programs into your schools, and it also helps with teacher training and education. I'm not sure exactly what aspect we're using it for. I will follow back up with an email as soon as I have that information. I do know that it's being used as part of our engineering program.
I think it was like on page 95, and it looked like there were fees for going to some,
Training, yeah, there
Yeah.
was training, and it's part of the year's $1,200 went into this past fiscal year, and then there's a balance. I have a question out to what is that balance?
okay, well, you can bring it back to us next meeting with more information.
Or I can
you know.
follow up with an email, whatever.
Some people wait till the very last minute to ask questions. I think it's inexcusable, but that's what I do, inexcusable things.
But all right.
Okay.
Not a problem. The other question had to do with the AWSA memberships, and how many people it was for a check. We spent $26,990 this year, and that's for memberships for 48 people. And the price per member is $5.15 for elementary, and the middle and high school teachers administrators have the opportunity to also belong to the National Association of Secondary School Principals, and that their membership total is $765 for both the AWSA and the NASSP. Last year, by comparison, we had 47 members for $27,560. The second part of the question was, is this an automatic thing? Do we automatically enroll principals and administrators into these memberships, or do they have to request? And that I've got an outstanding question on. I get the impression that it's an automatic thing given the numbers every year, but I don't know that for sure. So I'll follow back up with that.
I'm sure Mr. Gray I'll have to have a talk with Mr. Gray about that. I don't understand why we do automatic expenditures if it is an automatic expenditure. It adds up, right? Now it's almost 30 grand. Total.
Good chunk.
Okay. And in relation to that, obviously, we're not paying union dues for our teachers, so it's essentially, it's kind of a different time and different space. I'm not saying we wouldn't do it, but just automatically doing it seems to be a little bit odd.
Again, I don't want to speak out of turn on that. I want to verify that it is automatic. So I'm not positive on that.
Mr. Gray, are you familiar, is that a normal thing that all districts across the state pay those fees for all their administrators?
For association dues?
Yeah.
Typically, yes. I've never heard of a district that doesn't. I mean, at least one association. Yeah, I'm not aware of any that don't do it. So and I've only worked in bigger districts, so.
Yeah. Well, times are changing. Okay. Okay, any other questions about monthly vouchers? Do I have a motion for their approval?
I would so move.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Ms. Madden, second by Ms. Ronacek. Any other questions? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? None opposed, motion passes 4-0.
Chairman, will you note that Mr. Como has been excused? For people that just read our minutes later, they'll wonder,
Oh, okay.
vote comes out.
I guess Mr. Como's been excused, yes. Yeah. He always excuses me when I'm absent, so I'll excuse him, yeah. Action item is approval of participation in Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance contract.
Yeah, this is an organization or group that Waukesha has been a part of for at least 20-some years now. So it's a cooperative of 30 school districts in southeastern Wisconsin. And what the Southeastern Wisconsin School Alliance provides legislative counsel regarding matters of mutual interest. So it's lobbying. There's a 66-30 agreement that goes along with this. Again, I know in the mid-90s that Waukesha was part of this, and the list I don't think has changed. On page 6, you can see all the school districts that are currently involved with this. So it's pretty much a procedural thing of what we've done in the past, but it is something that the board needs to approve annually.
Ms. Madden?
Since we belong to this, I think that we have well gotten our $3,200 a year out of it. We do have a legislative liaison, and with the meetings of the core schools around us, I think it's well paid off. So I would move that we renew it.
Motion by Ms. Madden. Do I have a second? We have further discussion afterwards.
Second.
Mr. McCaffrey, seconds. Any additional discussion? Ms. Radchak?
Thank you. I just had a question of Elmbrook and Milwaukee. Why are they half price? Are they only partway in?
Correction, South Milwaukee.
Yeah, South Milwaukee.
Thank you.
You know, I just saw that too, Karen, and I'll have to get an answer back to you on that.
Okay.
It seems like I did know that at one time, and I just,
South Milwaukee provides maybe,
South,
they provide something.
South Milwaukee is the.
they're the
is-
fiscal agent for
They're the
this.
fiscal agent for it, so they have to.
That one I would, but Elmbrook, I just don't know. My guess is there must be a range of services that they just don't want to be part of, but I don't know what it is off the top of my head.
My guess is Elmbrook at one time was pretty active in the management of it as well. So there's the fiscal agent, and then there's some of the management and coordination. But we should check on that with them and find out, is there a lower due rate that I'm sure there's a reason why these two are reduced.
Maybe there's a coupon out there.
Half off?
Fine.
Groupon is what it is.
You know, and
Find it.
as a point of illustration, let's take Milwaukee Public Schools. They really don't need to be in this group, but they are, and they're a big part of why this group has some clout, because they're a very large school district. Be nice to be able to get Racine to join it as well, but we haven't had success in that. Not only does the fact Milwaukee Public Schools is in it, they also have their own lobbyist that's very active as part of the coordinating activities with the lobbyists that's associated with Southeastern Wisconsin.
Yeah, that's a payment in kind. He does a lot of work on behalf of that association, so that's their,
Right. So the other thing is, I'm quite aware that one of the issues has always been, this is an advocacy for public schools, but it's also very cognizant of many public schools are also fairly active in the choice movement, as is Milwaukee Public Schools. So it's not anti-choice. It's just we want to make sure the large school districts have a voice. You know, southeastern Wisconsin is different than, you know, Green Bay, and different than La Crosse, and different than the school board association at large, which is generally composed of one district, one vote. So the rural school districts have a disproportionate amount of power in the school board association. So this kind of helps balance that out. And it's nonpartisan. It doesn't get into, it's just more of a making sure that we have the information to present to legislators so that we can express our support for either what they're doing or our opposition for what they're doing. In this case, I think it illustrates that we've been supporting Scott Walker's, in general, we have supported the governor's proposed increase. what I can tell from reading the information. They'd like to take credit for being on board with that, so.
More than likely, I'll be able to track down the answer to your question, Karen, before the board meeting on Wednesday.
Thank you.
Also, any board member that'd like to attend the meeting, anyone's welcome to either attend the meeting or be a full-time participant. It used to be a very active group at one time. Any further discussions, questions? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes 4-0, and Mr. Como again is excused from the vote. Not here. Information items, monthly budget report.
Okay. Well, we're through June. We still have some lingering bills and things coming in, but we switched to the model of paying out the payroll by the end of June this year. So we have all of our payroll figures, and overall, we're looking to come in very good, certainly not over budget. We won't have final figures quite yet until we get everything, all the trickle-in bills that are going to come in through July yet, and get those paid. But with our taxes receivable booked and most of our revenue booked, as receivables, we're sitting at 123%, 100.23% of what we budgeted for revenue. So that's in good position. To kind of skip to the highlights, with our salary and benefits, we're pretty much really close to being right on with at 98.77% of our budgeted money's been spent. We expect a minor amount of hourly timesheets to come in from June work, but not much. And the employee benefits were at 99.39%. So everything, I won't go through every bit of it. Non-capital has looks to be quite under budget at 85.39%, but this is an area where we would expect to start seeing the final bills coming in, because things that were purchased last minute when people knew they had budget money, projects and things that went forward because there was budget money available. And that's the same thing with the capital objects, is right in around that same 85%. So those are the two areas that we expect to see more bills coming through. Overall, like I said, I think we're doing very well with where we're at, and expect to not be over budget. Fund 27 is coming in right at about the point we still have to do our final transfer from Fund 10 to Fund 27, but right now it's looking like it'll be right on target and budget about $18 million for that fund transfer. So good news for the ending budget. At least I take that as good news. Any questions on the report?
I only had one question. It kind of goes back to the vouchers, but there's a significant project at Meadowbrook with remodeling the library there. There's some expenditures on that? Okay.
Yeah, that was part of, I'm trying to think when we talked about that. We created a pool of money that principals could apply for small maintenance projects, kind of almost like the Ed Foundation does with scholarship. I think we call them scholarships here, but or mini grants. And they had applied for a facelift or redo of their library space.
And do you know how many schools ended up qualifying for that so-called application thing? How much money was
Top of my
involved?
head, about $250,000.
Okay.
And we've had the funds in the budget before, we just never really had a process for the money. So I would, and I'm going off the top of my head, I'd say 10 schools were impacted, maybe 12. I think we'll have more, because my guess is maybe some principals thought that, because the old process, you had kind of an application process, but then you may never have heard a response. So I think some principals didn't really take advantage of it. So I would guess that next year's process, we'll see a much more robust application pool. So I think it was pretty successful, but that's what that project is part of.
Might be worthwhile having a report on
Sure.
that particular budget item.
Yeah. Yeah, that'd be no problem at all.
That's a beginning of next year, end of this year report for the
Yeah, I could
next
bring it
F
in
and F meeting.
fall,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay, any other questions? Okay, go ahead, Mr. McCaffrey.
At purchase services,
I'm sorry, what?
looking at purchase services.
Okay.
The only question, the question that I have is, and you probably don't know, so you can just, it says telephone online communications. I was wondering what that was, that fax lines? Because we shouldn't have any lines left, because we spent all that money on IP. I'm just wondering if that's fax lines, or what that is. You see that?
I see, the $130,000 budget item?
No, this is purchase services for, $9,362, I believe was for the month.
Oh, that was for the 9,362 was last month, and then
Yeah.
the 10,000, last year, yes.
Yes, I was just wondering if that's,
I'll have to look
what
into that.
telephone that's for, because I know that we switched everything over to IP phones and,
I think there might be cell phones involved in
oh,
there.
oh,
but
okay, yeah, and that's, yeah, I was wondering if that's
I
the
know
cell
there's-
phone bill.
I know there's cell phones, I don't know if that's all of it, so let
Okay.
me look into
Yeah,
it.
whatever,
But
yeah.
I do know that cell phones are the chunk of it.
I know that the fax lines still have to be landlines,
I know,
fax over.
I can't say that I know what we're doing here, but we, in my previous district, we left one copper line to each school
Right.
for redundancy, and the fax line often
It
doubled
sits
as
on
that.
line, Right,
but,
yeah,
Maybe
was just
they,
wondering.
maybe they did a phone line and the fax line for redundancy,
Yeah.
but we can bring back an
Yeah.
answer.
just wondering.
Any other questions on that? Okay. Next information item?
Yes, looking at the proposal for next year's budget. We've been working on the budget for next year, and we have a couple different proposals or scenarios to look at. And so if you want to turn to this page that's got the charts across the top, what we did was we looked at where our new base revenue limit is, and then we looked at some different scenarios on where we thought the state aid might come in, and that is where our different scenarios for tax levies come in. And so the first scenario was to have no change in state aid. And we then also had a 2% decrease in state aid. But now the July 1st aid estimate was just released, and right now we are predicted to be at 1.09% decrease in the equalization aid from the state. So even though that's the scenario we're sitting at right now, a lot of that'll hinge on the governor's budget and that being approved. So we'd like to move forward with the proposal for scenario C, which shows a decrease of 2% in state aid. And what that does is it pretty much holds the levy pretty constant, a drop of 0.04%. Some of the assumptions that have gone into the budget behind this, we've got assumptions of a 2% salary increase. Now we know more about salaries, we can go in and fine tune that for the final budget. The per pupil amounts that we're giving the sites is held constant at the per pupil amount. Obviously, it changes with enrollment, what their total allocation is. One of the bigger assumptions is the DPI per pupil aid. In 2016-17, it was $250 per student. The proposed budget has it at $450 per student, so a $200 increase. We budgeted a little bit more pessimistically for that at $400 a student until we get the final budget approved from the governor. We won't know for sure if that number holds. So we were a little more pessimistic on that. We looked at a property value increase of 1.5%. Most of the department budgets were able to hold constant. There were a few decreases, minor decreases that didn't cause anyone any stress or concern. But again, the bottom line is that if we, in 16-17, our tax rate was 8.66, and now it would be 8.53. So pretty much holding it constant, and it could go down if we end up at the 1.09, but we just want to wait and see. questions that you might have that we can answer. We've got a little bit of a declining enrollment here going on, and so unfortunately, our revenue limit keeps dropping a bit, and our revenue limit is decreased by a little over $100,000 going
In terms of head count, that would mean one FTE about,
into FTE,
yeah,
$1,000.
Oh, a teacher FTE.
yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Teacher FTE, I'm not talking, yeah.
That's the problem with using that declining enrollment number, is it's not like you can just say one class goes away, because obviously the enrollment is spread out across many grades, so if we get it for something that isn't necessarily a one-on-one connection to the budget.
Versus the impact if we didn't get the increase in per pupil aid of 450, or 400 or 450, would be a lot more dramatic.
Correct.
Budget in the order of $1.5 million to $2 million.
No, that aid is keeping these budget cycles rather smooth. I don't know if that can continue to go on forever, but I'll take it for 2 more years, and then we'll worry about 2 years from now. Again, we'll be bringing we have a summary of our revenues and expenses. We didn't run the detail reports because we're still tweaking it, so we are balanced based on those assumptions. In the tax levy scenario, part of the budget we'll bring to you next month. I have to have some sort of tax levy in there. I'm sure you're interested in where we think it's going to be, so we think if we go with the 2% drop in state aid, and I think hopefully a pretty conservative valuation estimate of 1.5% that in fall, that we would see that picture improve. Again, prefaced on the assumption that we don't know what the state budget is at this time. Even though I think there's some consensus on school funding, I've also seen things change at the last minute too, so.
So you included this chart here.
Open enrollment, and
That's an interesting chart because of the differences from year to year.
there's one thing I'd like to point out on this year's difference. There's a significant hike in open enrollment revenue this year. That's the blue line. But one of the reasons for that, we did have an increased number of FTEs in regular education by about 20 students. We had a dramatic increase in special education open enrollment from 38 students to 68 students. And that rapid increase happened in a year where DPI had decided to find a way to streamline special education open enrollment tuition. In the past, you would get the base aid that you would get, the $6,900 per student, plus if you had additional services, you would bill those separately to the schools for any additional services that a specific child needed. Well, in those cases, we didn't usually have additional services above and beyond our costs. This year, DPI is giving schools $12,000 per special education student. So it almost doubled the amount that we were receiving per student. And our open enrollment out figures last year were even, 38 out, 38 in for special education. This year it was 68 in and only 32 out. So when you get that dramatic of an increase, over $400,000 of this increase is due to our special education open enrollment.
And
But it's nice. It'll probably hold pretty constant, but this was a interesting jump because of that additional funding that.
we have special education needs kids in eAchieve at times,
Correct.
probably a dozen or so, maybe.
I don't know the number, but I don't think it's a significant number at this point in time. It's a newer offering through eAchieve.
I could get that number.
Yeah, it'd be nice to know the historical number on special education because that would have an impact on that program as well, as far as the dollars coming in.
We're working with Rick and to come with a eAchieve proposal or update, an eAchieve update in August that will talk about where we're at finance-wise and cost of the program to revenue of the program, and we can include that as part of that if that's okay.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at this, the actual open enrollment net total significantly, it's almost half, well, more than half than what it was 9 years ago. Kind of odd.
Yeah, as Sherry mentioned, one of the reasons I had her include this report now is I thought it was a good lead-in to the report from eAchieve next month that the committee had asked for. I think it's kind of, it makes it difficult to compare '08 to 2017 because the rules for special ed have changed and, you know, there's been, so it's not exactly an apples to apples, but we did have a better spread on a dollars basis and a student basis,
Well-
10 years ago than we do today, but.
I would think you could create the same chart exactly for, I mean, different numbers for eAchieve. You have receipts coming in, you have expenses going out, and there should be a net total. And it should be for, essentially, we've had eAchieve at least 9 years. I mean, so from 2006 to 2017 would be plenty.
I want to say we can pull that out. Sherry to agree.
9 years might be interesting, but we'll,
Yeah.
I think we were looking, when we were meeting with Rick, we're looking at 5-year history.
We're hoping to bring you back.
I'd like to see 9 years because we've had some major events in there. I mean, when did we cut the relationship with K-12? That would have been like in 2008.
Know when we left K-12 off the top of your head?
It was probably about 2011.
So
I think we operated 3 years. The first year, 2008, we were with the company that K-12 bought out, and then 2 years with K-12 and realized that it wasn't going to work,
But
so.
when did you do the first renegotiate, Todd? Do you remember?
We were in the process of renegotiating with, I can't think of the first company, when K-12 bought them out, and then we renegotiated with K-12, because that original contract was pretty horrible. It required $1 million upfront payment before we even knew how many kids we had. So there was just no way you were gonna ever break even on that. So we went to K-12, and it was based on strictly a per pupil payment, so that if we lost enrollment, we didn't lose money. I can't even remember the exact figures on that, but it helped certainly.
Well, if we track it all the way back, I mean, you came to us, I mean, you haven't been with us 10 years yet, have you? 8?
Well, yeah, in year 10,
You're 10?
yeah. So I get 2008,
2008.
yeah.
It was 2008 when you came. So we'd have we'd have eAchieve prior to you being here, eAchieve after you made a
Right.
change in the negotiation with them, and then eAchieve after we broke
Right.
completely.
yeah.
So that would be a nice trend if we could go
Yeah.
from 2006 to 2017 to compare those numbers.
Yeah, we'll bring back something. Actually, we were planning on bringing some version, eAchieve version of this, and we'll bring as many years as we can gather data on.
I think and Rick's been here for quite a bit of this time, so it'd give him an opportunity to explain numbers like this. If it's in this format, it's pretty simple. And additional numbers he wants to present as well, but at least this gives us an in and out and net is a nice number.
Just to give you, and we met with Rick last week, I think it was. He's going to give a little bit of a history, some new challenges and soon new initiatives, and maybe he'll talk about offering special ed. And then Sherry or I, or both of us, will do a financial break even or a financial analysis of 16, 17, just a snapshot of their expenditures versus what we think they brought in. Just to give you an idea of what that report's going to look like, and this graph, or their version of this graph, will be part of that.
Well, we're supposed to have 1,000 kids with just 4 grade levels.
For eAchieve?
We've never made anywhere as close, and we have way more grade levels now, so.
Yeah, and I also,
Seeing the grades, to me, I don't get it. It hasn't worked so far.
I mentioned to Rick that I think this is a report that should become before this committee on an annual basis, because eAchieve is a different operation than our bricks and mortar schools for a lot of reasons, whether it's advertising or whatever. But for him to be able to answer those questions, and for, unless they're strictly financial, then we can answer them, and then the board can make whatever decisions that come
But
from that.
Achieve was established as a financial decision with a goal of it being as good as our brick and mortar schools. And I think financially, we struggled. The other goal we did well on, but the financial thing, because of the things that we talked about earlier.
Yeah, we'll have to, I quite honestly don't know right now, but we'll know by next month.
Be part of our budgeting process too, as far as what we're doing for Achieve. Okay, any other questions about the budget? So, let me see if I can find where I'm at in today's agenda. There we are. That brings us to the end of our information items. We don't have any discussion items tonight, so I need a motion for adjourning to executive session. May I have that from someone?
I'll make a motion to adjourn to executive session pursuant to Wisconsin Statute 19.85, 1E, for the purpose of deliberating or negotiating the purchase of public properties, the investing of public funds, or conducting other public business regarding a bypass construction plan proposed by Department of Transportation, which requires closed sessions for competitive or bargaining reasons and for the purpose of consideration or offer regarding surplus property.
Second.
Motion by Ms. Ronacek, second by Mr. McCaffrey. Any discussion? Discussion? Roll call vote?
Ms. Reinacek?
Aye.
Ms. Madden?
Aye.
Mr. O'Brien?
Aye.
Mr. McCaffrey?
Aye.
Motion passes 4-0.